maybe this is something that will resonate with you. When I'm working with some students, what happens is I can tell that their speech sounds a little bit muffled. It kind of like takes on like a quality like this versus a quality like this. Could you hear the difference between those two ways of speaking? And that first way, while it can certainly be enough to express what you want to say, and maybe even in some situations actually sound natural, it does lose some of the clarity of, especially like the vowel sounds, and words kind of run together. And I think that what we can do is add a little bit of sharpness and clarity and form to that sound in order to help it sound more natural. And today we're going to take a look at an example of that and suggestions that you can use to achieve a more natural clarity to your accent and to your speech the next time that you speak in American English. Good morning, guys. Good evening. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Schwa Mill. This is your American English pronunciation review show where we take a look at files that you send to us so that way you can get some feedback and others can learn in the process with you. To guide you in this process, there is me. Hi, my name is Geoff. It rhymes with breath. That's one of the 4 keys to a natural sound in American English, including placement, pitch, breath, trying to weaken your consonant sounds in order to strengthen your vowel sounds. We have 2 more files for you to take a look at today. Let's begin with this one.
Okay, so I just finished watching Stranger Things, and let me just tell you, it was a huge letdown.
All right. Thank you as always for sending us. Thanks to everyone who's been sending us files and things like that. It's hard to do a review show if you have nothing to review, so we appreciate you guys sending us files. Let's listen to this one more time.
Okay, so I just finished watching Stranger Things, and let me just tell you, it was a huge letdown.
All right. I've been talking with a lot of students recently about what's a quick strategy to change your pronunciation, oftentimes with not necessarily a lot of effort or concentration. And the thing we've been talking about is focusing on the emotion that you feel when you're saying the thing. Like, are you happy? Are you angry? Are you sad? So this is an example of dialogue where we do have some emotion, right? We have that idea at the end that this is a letdown and that disappointment. We're trying to convey that, But it could be that when you're talking, you're trying to sound happy. It could be when you're talking, you're trying to sound frustrated and things like that. So kind of tapping into that. Like, imagine that you need to introduce yourself. You can use this phrase like, hi, my name is blank and I'm from blank. Just using that as a baseline. And say it a couple different ways. The first way that I want you to do, I want you to smile for like 3 seconds. Imagine that you're really, really happy. And just smile, smile, smile. And then say the phrase like, hi, my name is blank and I'm from blank. And now another way to handle this is to imagine that you're really sad or you're really angry about something. And put yourself into that face. Move your eyebrows, move your lips, whatever you do with your face when you're feeling that sort of emotion. Okay, and just hold that for a couple seconds. And then say the same introduction. The hi, my name is, and then I'm from blank. And most likely, if you actually did that, tapping into the emotions, what you're going to find is that you sounded different. You changed your pitch, maybe you changed your speed, maybe you changed your breath along words. And I didn't tell you to do any of those things. It just kind of happened naturally, right? And a lot of times, those natural movements actually help us to sound more natural. So emotion is a really big key of pronunciation and communication and expressing ourselves. So if you're able to tap into that more, it can help you sound more natural. And I think that's one real big benefit of this audio file. I think this audio file overall sounds pretty natural.
Okay, so I just finished watching Stranger Things, and let me just tell you, it was a huge letdown.
Okay, because this starts a little bit more kind of like, almost like excited, like talking to a person, maybe a friend, and you want to share something with them and you're eager to do it. And then what happens when we get to the letdown part, we start slowing down. It was a huge letdown, things like that. And that just all kind of happened, I imagine, relatively naturally. Some other things here that are happening that I think are really helping this audio file sound natural.
Okay, so I just finished watching Stranger Things.
That part. I just finished watching Stranger Things. So this is a case of a descending pattern. Very common in American English where you start higher. I just Then you work a little lower. Finish watching. Then you work a little lower. Stranger Things. I just finished watching Stranger Things. That sort of progression in English is very, very common. And that's something I think is really beneficial to this audio file. One final note here. If there were things to maybe try taking a little bit further.
Okay, so I just finished watching Stranger Things, and let me just tell you.
The transition from Stranger Things to Let Me Just Tell You, I will say, is a little bit flat, especially from a pitch perspective.
Okay, so I just finished watching Stranger Things, and let me just tell you.
Because basically what's happening is we're getting like 3 pitches in a row that are more or less the same. It's like things and let, things and let. If you wanted this to sound a little bit more dynamic and create a little bit more separation, what I would recommend doing is going a little bit lower in pitch on the and.
Okay, so I just finished watching Stranger Things, and let me just tell you.
Versus like, I just finished watching Stranger Things, and let me just tell you. Something like that. Just a little lower on the and there. What it does, it adds a little bit more contrast and breaks your pattern. English in general doesn't really like it when you have a pitch sequence that is using the same pitch 2 times in a row, let alone 3 times in a row. So that'd be just a little thing to consider adding. This is one of the advantage of things like filler words. I know filler words have a very negative reputation. If you don't know what a filler word is, they are words like and like, those sorts of words. They have a negative reputation because they can make your speech disjointed. They can make your speech hard to follow. They can sound unprofessional. One advantage that they have, though, is they can be opportunities to create separation between sections of your thought groups. So by having filler words, what they can do is give you opportunities to add contrast. For instance, lowering the pitch, going faster or slower, things like that. In general, I try not to use filler words myself. I'm not the biggest fan of words like and of. However, there are other ways that you can incorporate sounds into your speech that have a similar role. For instance, like repeating yourself. So in this case, he or she uses like the word and. That's another way, using like conjunctions. But another way you could do this is kind of like what I just did right there. Another way you could do this, I repeated the word way, changing the pitch on the second time you do it. So repeating a word is another way you can do that. It sounds a little bit more natural and is a little bit less disconnected than using just a filler word itself. All right, but thank you so much for sending that audio file. Before we move on to our second, a quick note. Want to say that if you want to hang out with me a little bit more during the day, I have lots of group coaching sessions that I do because, let's be honest, there's lots of aspects of pronunciation that a lot of people are not covering. They're not covering placement enough. They're not covering aspects of contrast enough. They're not looking at breath. All these things are crucial if your goal is trying to achieve a natural sound. So if you're trying to get greater insight into the things that will actually give you a natural sound in American English, I encourage you to consider hanging out with me more times during the day. You can see at the bottom of the screen there is the schedule there. So for instance, today's Tuesday. So I'm going to be doing my group coaching from 9 to 9:30, 10 to 10:40, 11 to 11:30, all those times in the morning, New York, and then tonight, 9 to 9:30 p.m. If you want to hang out with me, what you can do is become a channel member and for a very big discount, be able to watch all of those classes live, interact with us in the chat, and see all of the replays. As you can see, I'm doing a lot of classes during the day, so automatically if you join today, you get a huge back catalog of hundreds, if not thousands, of classes to look at your leisure, or you could just watch the newest ones. So if that sounds like something that is of interest to you, I do encourage you, hey, join our channel membership. It's at youtube.com/FluentAmerican at that $5.99 level. Just a note. Hello to Siva hanging out with us today. Good time to you. Hopefully, if it's morning or evening or afternoon where you are, hope you're doing okay. Let's take a listen to our second audio file for today.
He's been on his game lately, but everyone else has been out to lunch.
All right, let me play that one more time.
He's been on his game lately, but everyone else has been out to lunch.
Okay, so I spoke at the beginning of this stream about having kind of like a muffled sound, and that's what I'm hearing here. It kind of sounds to me more or less like he's been on his game lately. He's been on his game lately. Versus if I were to say that like he's been on his game lately, there's a difference in sound quality there, right? And it's due to a couple of things, I believe. So the first thing I would say is that sounds to me like our placement's pretty high. It sounds to me like we're kind of like top of throat, kind of like this area. Like if I were to like kind of like talk or like kind of like around here, okay. So we don't have as much resonance.
He's been on his game.
He's been on his game versus like he's been honest. He's been honest. He's been honest. So it sounds to me like we're projected pretty high. So that's the first thing. We gotta change our placement. Our placement's pretty high. To give an example, like let's look at the word he.
He's been on his game lately.
He really reduces he, which is fine. You can do that. Let's maybe use a different word.
He's been on his game lately.
Game versus game. Hear a difference? Game. Okay, maybe we're even closer placement-wise, almost to our lips. Okay, so what happens if we try to just shift that placement down a couple times? Like, let's just try to move game down a couple times. Like, game. Do you see how I just kind of moved the sound down 5 or 6 times there? That's kind of like the first step. You can also try dragging if that's hard. So instead of doing like game, we want to end up at game. So like game. Okay, trying to just move the sound down because we're just projecting really high. Okay, so that's the first thing I would say is that if we're trying to lose some of this muffledness, because all the words are kind of running together, especially with regards to the vowels. So that's the first step, trying to lower that placement. The second thing I would say is that it sounds to me like we're kind of blocking off some sounds in the throat a little bit. We're a little tight.
He's been on his game lately.
It's like honest versus like honest. Okay, so it sounds to me like maybe the back of our tongue is a little bit closing off airflow through our throat. And, when we think about this, we want to try to open the throat as much as possible. Let's say, for instance, let's use maybe the ah sound, for instance, on the word on.
He's been on his game.
Yeah, so that's another thing too. Our vowel sounds are very fast. You can see like when he says on, that the ah sound is barely there.
He's been on his game.
He's been on his versus he's been honest. We got to hold the vowels. Because that's actually probably the second step is give more space to your vowel sounds. The third thing I would say then is let's try to open up the throat a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to use this ah sound from like the word on. Okay, and this is an exercise you may have seen me do before if you're familiar with the stream. But what we're going to do is start off with your hands kind of close together. And when our hands are like this, we're going to try to have a very tense sound like, oh. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to open up our hands, move them closer to our shoulders. So right now my hands are like at the corners of my lips. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to send my hands open palm towards my shoulders. And it's like we're opening like French doors. Okay, so we're opening the door. Okay, so when we have our hands by the corners of our lips, it's going to be real tight on that ah sound. And then when we open our palms and move towards our shoulders, we're going to imagine the door is wide open. Okay, and we're going to have a much more open sound. And see if you can follow me. So let's start real tight. Hands at the corners of our lips, like, oh. And then we're going to open up and try to open the sound with it. It's like, ah. And then we can send it back. It's like, ah. And so that's kind of like you can hear the quality of the sound changes when we're open versus when we're closed. And that's kind of what I want you to practice there as well. Okay. So starting off with that on sound that's really closed off and then trying to open it as well. I think if you're going to be able to incorporate a little bit more diaphragm work in addition to giving more space to your vowels and lowering your placement, those are going to be my 3 big tips for here. This is going to completely change how this sounds because right now it's just very closed off.
He's been on his game lately.
Like he's been on his game lately. He's been on his game lately. Okay. A final note here is when we listen to this, it's a little bit flat pitch-wise. We're kind of going back to the same pitches over and over again.
He's been on his game lately. But everyone else has been out to lunch.
He's been on his game lately when everyone else has been out to lunch. There is some pitch movement here. I don't want to say like it's completely flat, but it is very compressed. And part of the reason we're so compressed is because we're just not fully accessing our body, you know, because you could really just double the pitch range that you gave me. He's been on his game lately when everyone else has been out to lunch. Versus if you wanted to like double that pitch range, you could end up with something like, he's been on his game lately and everyone else has been out to lunch. Like something like that. That's like double the range there. Because trying to end up more at that place. All right, guys. As you saw earlier, I do have a bunch of classes to get ready for today. So I do want to thank you for hanging out with me. I hope to see you. For those of you who are already channel members, I'll see you guys a little bit later in those classes. If you're not, think about joining. If that sounds like something of interest to you, or we'll be back with this stream with the Schwa Mill on Friday at 7 a.m. New York. You can send in your own audio files. If you take a look at our video description, we have a free Telegram group that you can join to send in audio files that I select for review if you're trying to get some practice in that way. Otherwise, I will see you all later. Thanks for hanging out with me. I will be back on Friday. Have a good day, have a good night, and a good